Hey, Susan, I went ahead and bought an overseas luxury condo. After my father's funeral, my sister bragged about her surprise purchase. An overseas luxury condo. And I still have more than $100 million left. What to do? An overseas luxury condo? You bought it? I can't help but laugh. My sister's boasting made me and the relatives burst into laughter. What? What's so funny? My sister would not understand the reason for the laughter until several months later. I'm Susan, a 45-year-old housewife. I also work part-time. I have a husband and a high school-aged daughter. My mother passed away in an accident when I was young, and my father raised my sister and me. My father was diagnosed with an illness 2 years ago, had successful surgery, but relapsed and has been in the hospital for the past 3 months. I'm here to visit my father today. Thank you always. Sorry to always bother you, Susan. What are you talking about? Once you feel better, we'll go to your favorite French restaurant, okay? Bob's gonna take us. I mentioned my husband's name. Yeah, that sounds good. Give Bob my regards. Also, I brought this from Lily. Saying that, I spread out a drawing my daughter, who's in the art club, had made. I'm biased, but my daughter's good at drawing. My father used to draw and collect paintings, and he's very close to his granddaughter. The drawing, made for Grandpa, had a bright rainbow in the background that made you feel energized just by looking at it. Thank you. Lily has improved again. With a faint voice, he spoke and fell asleep shortly after. Seeing my increasingly frail father, I held back tears. I've been told by the doctors that surgery is no longer an option this time. But there's still hope if the medication works. I want him to live, even just a little healthier, even just a bit longer. I must not lose hope myself. Then, the hospital room door opened abruptly. Hi, Susan, long time no see. How's Dad? My sister appeared with an energy that seemed out of place in a hospital. Kitty, you've hardly shown your face lately. What have you been up to? What? I came, didn't I? Anyway, I've got something to talk about Dad's inheritance. What? You know the land worth $200 million that I mentioned before? Can I have it? I'll give you our father's savings or something. Hold on, before even talking about who gets what, do we need to discuss this now? Why not? It's important. Dad's still alive, and I want him to get better, if even just a little. Shouldn't we be more concerned about him? Even if you say that, what's incurable is incurable, right? Kitty. I glared at my younger sister without thinking. Usually, she doesn't care for our father at all, never visiting him in the hospital, and the first thing she talks about after not seeing him for so long is his inheritance. Doesn't she have any feelings for our father? I'm at my wit's end, but given that we're in a hospital, I swallowed my anger. My sister Kitty, who is 5 years younger than me, is single. While I've always been plain and enjoyed reading, in contrast, my sister liked fashionable and flashy things. She used to party all the time at trendy clubs and was popular with men, but she never had a long-lasting relationship with anyone, giving the impression of always moving on. Though she's 40 now, and I think she should settle down a bit, to each their own in life. Marriage doesn't necessarily mean happiness, and as long as she doesn't bother anyone, she can live freely. Although Kitty and I have different personalities, we're the only sisters, and we've never been particularly close, but we weren't on bad terms either. Until now. But since our father fell ill, Kitty changed. Or rather, her true nature has come out. It was 2 years ago when the disease was first discovered. The surgery had a 50-50 chance of success, and our father called my sister and me. My father's sister, Aunt Lucy, was also present. I want to talk about my inheritance in case something happens to me during this surgery. You see, I inherited some land and mountains in Nebraska. Back in the day, it was said to be worth $200 million. What? Kitty shouted out loud. I was also surprised. I knew that Dad was from Nebraska, but this was the first time I'd heard this story. Dad! So? Will Susan or I get that land? That's right, but the $200 million was a long time ago. It's a lot of trouble to manage. If you girls are fine with it, I'd like to ask Lucy first. After our mother's death, she took care of us a lot until we grew up. If it wasn't for Aunt Lucy, we would have felt lonelier, as our father was often busy with work. She's like a second mother to us, and we're as grateful to her as we are to our father. What? You're gonna give it to Aunt Lucy? That's impossible. That's not it. Kitty, let me finish talking. Dad, don't overdo it. That's right. There's no need to rush the conversation. Our aunt said that, turning to face us. Kitty, Susan, too. What my brother means isn't that he wants to give me the land. I received land from my parents just like him, and your father's inheritance is, of course, yours, my dear nieces. Oh, thank goodness. That's right, Aunt Lucy would never take our inheritance. Hey, Kitty. That was rude. But it's $200 million, Susan. You must be happy too. Sure, I was surprised. But you know, rural mountains are not like regular land, and they can't be sold easily, and they're hard to manage. Rather than accepting it directly, I should talk to a real estate agent first, and... Oh, enough, Aunt Lucy, just stay out of it. My sister quickly interrupted my aunt. We don't need your help with the inheritance. Susan and I will talk about it ourselves. If other people get involved, it'll just complicate things, right? But there might be things we don't understand on our own, so it might be safer with Aunt Lucy's help. Ugh, Susan, you've always relied too much on Aunt Lucy. Even though she'd been helped a lot herself. Hearing about the large inheritance had clearly excited my sister. The word $200 million seemed to be the only thing in her head. Well, both of you must be troubled to hear about this all of a sudden. Anyway, if the surgery is successful, there's no need to talk about the inheritance right now, right, Bob? That's right, Dad. I believe the surgery's gonna be successful. Let's hang in there. Yeah, thank you. In fact, the surgery was successful at that time, and I was genuinely happy, but I was shocked to see my sister clearly disappointed. After hearing about the inheritance, she changed, and since then she hardly visited the hospital and seemed to be out having fun. And this time too, she came rushing as soon as she heard about the recurrence. As we looked at our sleeping father's face and talked about his critical condition but that he was stable for now, she uttered unbelievable words. What? He's gonna hang on a little longer? Susan, let me know when it's critical. Are you seriously saying that? I managed to hold back my trembling voice as my sister nonchalantly replied. Well, what's done is done. But $200 million. Let's decide on this now. Enough. Just go home. I finally sent my sister away. Susan. Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. Did I wake you? No, Kitty's right. We should talk about the inheritance properly. You were listening? No, we don't need to talk about that. It's important, Susan. Listen well. Huh? And a few days later, I called my sister to discuss the division of the inheritance. My father requested that my aunt be present as well. So just to confirm, Susan, you're really giving me a piece of land worth $200 million? And there won't be any complaints later? It's our father's wish that we don't quarrel over the inheritance, I responded. My sister nodded contentedly. That's a relief. Dad must really love me, after all. Kitty, dear, there'll be no changing your mind later, wanting cash instead. Your share is in the form of land, all right? Of course. I won't ask to change the inheritance later. What I'm getting is $200 million. My father spoke up. I'll have the lawyer handle it properly and leave a will. Both of you are okay with this? Yes, get it done quickly. Thanks, Dad. Yay, I've got to call him. Kitty exclaimed. I felt a sadness beyond anger that my sister could say I've got to at such a time. I didn't need an inheritance if my father could recover, I wanted him to live longer. Didn't my sister feel the same way? As if sensing my emotions, Aunt Lucy placed her hand on my shoulder. I met her eyes and slowly nodded. After the distribution of the inheritance was finalized, Kitty seemed to be leading an increasingly luxurious life, relying on the $200 million. Even when I reached out about whether she wanted an explanation of the land or if Aunt Lucy should introduce a real estate agent, she just read the messages and ignored them. she just kept sending photos of the designer brands she'd been buying up, or of herself in expensive-looking restaurants and sushi places. I don't care what happens to such a heartless person anymore. I decided to spend time with my father every day, going to the hospital. My husband and daughter helped with the housework and came to see my father, as did relatives and his friends. Several weeks passed in this peaceful manner, but despite my wishes, my father departed for heaven. Susan, thank you, truly. I couldn't forget the face of my father, who smiled and said that at the end, and my tears wouldn't stop. My husband, daughter, and my aunt rushed over, and we shared our grief. I contacted Kitty first, but she was slow to appear, leaving me to arrange the viewing and funeral. She finally showed up after the viewing had ended. Sorry, Susan, I'm late. What have you been doing? And what's with that outfit? I was speechless. Although she was wearing black funeral attire, her makeup was heavy, her nails were colorful. Her brightly colored hair was untied. But I was on vacation with him. I even rushed back for this. When her father was in the hospital and his condition wasn't very good. Would she really go on vacation at such a time? I just can't understand her mindset anymore. Anyway, please pay your respects to Dad, and say hello to all the relatives. You better take off those nails, I scolded. Yeah. Stop nagging. The next day, after the mass, while everyone was waiting for the burial and reminiscing about my father, Kitty boasted. Hey, Susan, I bought a penthouse abroad. What? A penthouse abroad. And I still have over $100 million left. What should I do? Should I buy a condo in the States? Or go on a cruise? I've pretty much bought all the brand items I wanted. You bought a penthouse abroad? Really? You already bought it? Heh, you're jealous, right? He and I are going to live there together. Kitty, $200 million, $200 million, you mean? Oh, no, don't even think about splitting it in half. We decided on the inheritance distribution beforehand, and Aunt Lucy is a witness, you know? I can't help but laugh. My sister kept talking proudly, and I, along with Aunt Lucy and all the relatives, couldn't help but burst into laughter. What's so funny? You know what, right? You mean the $200 million from that mountain? Kitty, are you okay? No, this is insane. What? What's going on? Ah, sorry. Kitty, were you trying to cheer us up since we were feeling down? What? You keep saying $200 million, $200 million, but did you actually check? Huh? Check what? You haven't actually received $200 million in cash yet. Your inheritance is the mountain and land. What? So that's going to turn into $200 million. Don't say something crazy just because you're bitter. The funeral's over, so I'm going to turn it into money right away. My headstrong sister seemed to understand nothing. You sure you don't need any help? Aunt Lucy asked. We have to go there at least once, you know. Since it's our hometown, should we show you around? Our last act of kindness was also abruptly rejected by my sister. I don't need it. It's useless to try to get your hands on the leftovers. With that, she left, ignoring the stares of the relatives. My sister, who didn't even see my father's last moments, felt no sadness, and thought only of her inheritance. Divine punishment is coming soon. And a few months later, I got a message from my sister, saying she really wanted to see me. Hey, Susan! It's been a while. How's living abroad? I didn't really understand the inheritance thing, it seems. Inheritance? Oh, the $200 million dream life, right? Did you come to brag about it? I answer coolly. No, that land, it's not selling for $200 million at all. I figured as much. What? I told you from the beginning, the property value was $200 million at the time. What? That was the total valuation of the land at the time. You can only get $200 million by selling it. But the real estate agent says it's not worth anything close to $200 million in this condition. That's obvious. To sell, it has to be in a perfect, well-maintained condition. But even then, selling forest land these days is tough, I hear. What? You need to prevent tree erosion and landslides, and it's a region that's becoming more and more depopulated every year. Plus, if it's not well kept, finding a buyer is next to impossible.
Don't joke around. If the land doesn't sell, I still have to pay inheritance tax and property tax. What's going on here?
That's just how it is.
What about my $200 million?
Calm down, take a breath.
How can I possibly calm down about this? I never knew this was the situation.
No, you normally check when inheriting land, right? It was written in the documents.
But the document was so long and I couldn't read all of it. I just signed it so it would be mine right away.
Your greed and failure to investigate are to blame. Dad tried to explain that it was hard to manage, and Aunt Lucy said many times she would help deal with the contractor. You ignored them all.
But still.
What did you come here for?
So, I thought, maybe we can talk about the inheritance split again.
My sister's face is pale, even though she's smiling. The inheritance is already settled, it's impossible. You made sure of that promise.
Wait. You knew it wasn't really $200 million, right? If you knew and didn't tell me, that's fraud.
Even though she was the one who wouldn't listen, calling it fraud is quite an accusation. It's no lie. The land was worth $200 million at the time, I swear. We tried to tell you several times. We've got the call and email records to prove it. Who's the one who ignored all that and just kept sending pictures of the extravagant life?
Huh?
Why not have a reputable dealer take care of maintenance or sale for you now? You could make some money out of it.
I've been trying different places these past few months. But everywhere I go, they lie and say it's only worth a few $1,000s, so I turned them down.
Oh dear, what a waste.
What? Aunt Lucy!
At that moment, Aunt Lucy appeared. I called her because you said you were coming today. In those mountains in Nebraska, the burden of management and financial costs outweigh any profits. You must appreciate anyone willing to take it on. What do you mean? I told you repeatedly. Even for me, a local, it took years of pleading with lumber companies, local governments, forestry associations, and folks to finally let go of that land. If it didn't turn out to be a loss, I'd be thankful.
Really? No way, that's a lie.
Blood drained from Kitty's face.
Aunt Lucy's land was much smaller. Dad's land was originally worth $200 million, so we should at least get a few $1,000,000, right?
My sister yelled, turning pale. You're still saying that? Aunt Lucy laughed off the comment. Even if there were valuable trees for lumber, we could have made a profit by selling them. But there's nothing like that in those mountains.
What? What?
I thought about just renouncing the inheritance since it's not worth much money, and the procedure is troublesome. My sister's face lit up at those words.
That's right, there's that option. If it's a liability, just renounce it. That mountain, I'll give it up. Then the inheritance my sister got will be half mine.
Kitty said, as if she had come up with a brilliant idea, confidently exposing her ignorance. Sorry to burst your bubble, but you only have 3 months from the time decedent died.
What?
Dad's been gone for nearly 6 months, so it's too late to renounce the inheritance now.
What?
Besides, if you renounce the inheritance, you give up everything else, too. What you're saying is crazy.
So what should I do? I bought a condo overseas.
You're on the path to staggering debt repayment. That's terrifying.
No. Help me, Susan.
No way, darling.
Don't be like that.
Ask your boyfriend for help.
That guy found out the inheritance wasn't gonna be $200 million and he ran away. Now he's gone without a trace. Ugh, I can't believe it.
I figured as much.
What?
My sister, who indulged in luxury, depending on her father's inheritance while he was fighting his illness, and her boyfriend, who'd party around with her. Anyone could have predicted that he would run away if he found out there was no money. You're just like that. You value money more than people, changing your attitude depending on whether you have it or not.
That's...
I have no intention of forgiving Kitty, who never took care of our father, who never showed gratitude or sorrow towards him. I'm fed up too. My brother waited till the end, believing that Kitty would come.
Susan! Aunt Lucy! Please, I'm sorry.
The person you need to apologize to isn't me. It's too late. You must have had many chances to realize it when he got sick, when it relapsed.
That.
Even looking at my sister's pale, tearful face, I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. She brought this on herself. Well then, goodbye. Good luck paying for the luxury you indulged in, counting on the inheritance. I closed the door with a smile. A year later. It seems my sister is working hard to repay her debts. Her ex-boyfriend, who signed as a joint guarantor thinking $200 million would come in, was working hard, too. I was surprised that they found him instantly, though my sister couldn't find him no matter how hard she looked. The two of them are working hard in harsh labor. I wonder how many decades it will take to repay the debt. As for me, I consulted with Aunt Lucy and relatives and built a grand tombstone with my father's inheritance. It seems my sister was mistaken, but there wasn't much left in my father's savings in the first place. There were property management fees, and he said to pay all the funeral expenses from his savings, so there's not much money left. That doesn't bother me at all, but my father had an unexpected gift for his granddaughter. A painting owned by my father had passed to my daughter.
Grandpa said it's a birthday present.
Your grandfather told me to tell Susan after things had settled down. I was surprised when my daughter and husband told me. My daughter whispered, "You know, one of them is supposed to be really valuable. Grandpa said if something troubles me in the future, I could get it appraised or sell it."
Really? I have no idea. You're not into art, Mom. But I don't want to sell it. I'm gonna treasure it forever, along with my memories with Grandpa.
My daughter's smile beamed. I looked up at the blue sky, thinking my father would be pleased too.